Hey guys, Cray for Books here. I am going to be doing a tutorial on how I braided my Violet wig. I started by pinning my wig on my wig head, and then I will be splitting the hair on the crown all the way down to about where the ears would begin. I highly suggest having a wig head for this portion. Trying to do this on yourself is really difficult. Once I've got it split, I will pin up the front of the hair out of the way. And I make sure to do that on both sides of the front of the hair. So I'm starting the braid behind the left ear, and I will split off a small section going down and split this into 3 sections where I will begin to Dutch braid. Now the difference between a Dutch braid and a French braid is these strands will be going under and over. So I will be tucking the hair under and bringing the other piece over. And what this will do is cause the braid to sit on top of the hair versus going underneath the hair. That's what gives it that crown look. If you are not familiar in how to Dutch braid or French braid, I highly suggest finding a tutorial on how to do that and practicing until you can hold the hair properly and tightly. Because doing this in a circle way is very difficult, and if you aren't familiar in how to do it, you will struggle with this particular tutorial. As you're adding in sections of hair, you want to make sure that the bottom part is about 1 inch from where your hairline ends. This will help for the braid to sit about 1 inch from your hairline, and the top pieces should be going all the way down. As you see here, I'm going to be taking the entire full section all the way down to about just 1 inch before my hairline ends, and that's going to be going into the top portion of the braid, and this will hold all of the hair in place, but it helps to make sure that that braid sits 1 inch from the hairline all the way around. I'm gonna speed up this portion just because it's all just bringing in those sections of hair and making sure that you're staying within that 1 inch at the bottom and going all the way down from the top. And you're gonna do this all the way across the back of the hair until you get to where you meet the right side of your ear. As you're doing this part, just make sure that you're keeping those pieces of hair nice and tight to keep it from pulling out or being too loose. Also want to mention, when you pin down your hair, that you pin down that bottom portion so that way it doesn't scrunch up as you're braiding, because the netting of the wig will scrunch up if you don't keep it pinned. So now that we've made it over to the right side where the ear starts, we're gonna let down this front section on the right side so that way it is ready to get put into the braid. As we're gonna go through, you're gonna see that the lengths of hair are gonna change going down, but the hair that we are putting from the bottom of the hair is still gonna be about 1 inch from the hairline. So you'll see a little bit of a difference here as we go towards the front of the hair. I want you to pay attention to the angles of where I'm taking the hair, because this is going to be very important in how the braid falls and how the hair goes into the braid without it being messy. So as we move towards the front, I want you to pretend that there is a pin in that one spot in the middle of the hair, right here. And you want to angle it down, almost like a pizza slice, but make sure that they're thin pizza slices, because they're going to get shorter and shorter as you go towards the front of the hair. I'm going to speed up this part just a little because it's kind of repetitive motions, just making sure that you're staying with that the angles correctly and keeping that 1 inch from the hairline on the bottom part. That's the most important part, is making sure it's 1 inch so that way it's even all the way around. So as you can see here, my slice of hair there is getting shorter, and I'm still making sure I still have that inch from the bottom so that way it's even. As you can see, I'm still making sure that that hair is held tightly so that way it's not too loose and falling out. So as we're moving forward to the front of the wig, we want to make sure that we're including flyaways and bangs. This is only a personal preference. If you would like that, you can. If not, you do not have to. Personally, I prefer having flyaways and little natural hairs going down. It just makes the wig look more natural. So I'm going to just pull out little tiny strands where the front of my ear would be, so that way the hair will fall naturally. One of the things that I get complimented the most on my wigs is that it does look natural, and the way I do this is by having little bits and pieces of hairs, because with your natural hair you do have flyaways, you do have small pieces of hair that just fall naturally and won't get put up into a ponytail or into a braid. So I want to make sure I include that in my wigs. So as we're moving all the way around, I'm going to let this side out as well. And as you can see, there's a natural line that falls in this wig. And my biggest thing that I want to happen here is that it still looks natural. So I'm going to be splitting it up into those pizza slices and bringing in small sections so that way I can make sure that it blends in and that middle part that's there is blended into the hair seamlessly. Also want to mention that this wig in particular was not a lace front wig, so as you can see it does have that hard line, and the biggest thing with this wig is trying to make it look natural where you don't really notice that hard line. So including these flyaway hairs is going to be a big helper in creating the illusion that this is my real hair. Normally I would suggest getting a lace front. Even if it's a partial lace front, it looks a lot more natural. But when I ordered this wig, it was during a time where financially I just couldn't afford to get a really good wig, and I had found this one on Amazon for really cheap, and I just decided to make it work. And I've been continuously complimented on it, which makes me feel better just because it is such a cheap wig. So as you can see, we got to that part, and I am blending it in by doing very small sections of hair. And I'm pulling out those little flyaway pieces, which I will be cutting later on to make them look natural. And if you notice that you take too much, you can always put some back. As you can see there, I took a little too much and it was very blocky and I didn't like that, so I put some back into the hair. I'm also going to take out this little part because I'm going to do it in the next section to hide that natural line that's there. So here is where I will be hiding that part by bringing in this section of hair in to that top part and making sure that it's very tight to hide the line. And then I'm going to be taking that portion that I had saved from the other side and bringing in a small piece of both sides and making sure that they're nice and tight. And you'll still kind of be able to see the line, but it's not noticeable. And that's really what I was going for with this wig. So now that we're coming around on the other side, I want to continue with my pizza slices, but now going the opposite direction, making sure that I'm taking small sections so that way it looks even and straight and not messy. I'm going to speed this part up. Again, it's very repetitive because it's the same motion all the way around. Just making sure that you are continuously taking out little tiny strands of hair for those flyaways as you go all the way around. And then once you get to where the ear would start on the left side, you'll stop taking pieces of flyaways. And as we come around, we are finishing with the braid. So you're gonna see where that braid had started on the other side. And what you'll do is you'll just braid it all the way down to the very end of the hair. And I'm gonna speed this part up a lot because it is not fun to watch. And it's pretty self-explanatory. You literally just braid all the way down. And once you get to the bottom of it, just tie it off with a little rubber band. And this is what it should look like once you have finished braiding all the way around. Now we're going to be adding this end of the braid into the crown braid to finish the crown braid. Now there's a couple different ways you can do this. You can tuck it in underneath, you can tuck it in on top. I actually like to weave mine into the existing braid to make it look more seamless. So what I do is I start off by finding a good loop in the braid and pull it through, and then I literally weave it by hand into the braid by taking little sections of the braid and just putting in the end piece and just going back and forth all the way through until I get to the very end portion of the hair. Now what this does is it creates almost like a vise where the end of the braid is tightly woven in and will not move, but it also makes it look seamless, like the crown braid goes all the way around. So as you can see, we're getting to the end bits here, and I'm kind of tucking it in underneath the portion of the braid, so that way you can't really see it. And I'll do this all the way until the very end of the braid. The best part about weaving this portion in is that you do not have to pin it at all because it will be tightly woven in and does not move. So our next step is to trim up these flyaways and little bang pieces to make them look natural. And also, I prefer to not have super long flyaways, mostly because they are very overstimulating. So the smaller amount and the shorter they are, the easier it is to handle. But if you prefer longer flyaways, you are more than welcome to keep them as long as you want. Also, if you prefer to have them curled, you can do that. I actually really like how this kind of has just a small kink in it, but mostly just naturally straight. And this is our finished product. As you can see, it is fairly well done, especially for a very cheap wig. There are a couple areas where you can kind of see through the wig, and for those areas, if you just pull the hair just a little bit, it helps to cover up those areas. If you want, you can also pull the braid out a little bit to poof it out like this. I only do it just a little bit just because there's a lot of hair here, so it's already a really thick braid, and I don't want to make it look any thicker than it already is. But I hope that this tutorial was helpful to you, and let me know if you try it, and I would love to see your Violet wig.